Hi, you guys. I wanted to take just a second and go over this unit rate quiz with you so that you can make your test corrections and then do your extra practice, and then I'm going to have you do a retake of this test. Okay, so remember that when you're finding unit rate, you're finding the amount for one. So we're going to go ahead and look at problem number one that says Sue runs 3 1/4 laps in 40.5 minutes. How many minutes does it take? This should have said a her. How many minutes does it take her to run each lap? Now, here is the key words that are going to help you with this. We want to know how many minutes it takes her to run each lap. So remember that when you're finding unit rate, you want to look for the key words of per and each. That's going to help you to know what you're going to divide by. So if it's minutes per lap, you're going to have minutes divided by laps, okay? If we're finding minutes per lap, the one that comes after the per, that's the one that you're dividing by. Now, once you have set up this information, now you can go back to your word problem and gather what you need and plug it into the rate to find your unit rate. So we know that she runs 3 1/4 laps in 40.5 minutes. So that means that on the bottom of our fraction, we're going to put the 3 1/4 because that's our information about laps. And on the top of the fraction, we are going to put the minutes, the 40.5 minutes. Now in your calculator, you're going to divide those, and your calculator is first going to show you an improper fraction of 162/13. But since this problem was given to you as mixed numbers, what we want to do is we want to give our answer in the same form that we were given the problem. So if we take 162/13 and we make this into a mixed number, we're going to get 12 and 6/13, okay? So that means that Sue runs 12 and 6/13 minutes per lap. So that means it takes her 12 and 6/13 of a minute to run one lap. That's what we just found. We just found the unit rate, how long it takes for one. Okay, let's go to the next one. Tom works at Crumble Cookie. They sell a box of 12 cookies for $38.99. There are 12 cookies in the box. So the first thing I want to underline for you is this part right here, this cookie cost per cookie. That's going to help us to know how to set up our rate, and then we'll be able to find our unit rate. So if it's cost per cookie, we're going to have cost divided by cookie. We want to know the cost for one cookie. And remember, you want to look for this keyword of per, because the one right after that is what you're going to divide by. So cost per cookie, well, we can see that the cost for 12 cookies is $38.99. If we want to know the cost for one cookie, we do the $38.99 and we divide by 12. Now in your calculator, you're going to get a number that looks like this, 3.249. Let me write this a little bit clearer. It's 3.249. And then it has a 1, and then it has a 6 that's repeating. Okay, if we're talking about money, money always rounds to the hundredths place. So when we look at this number right here, this is my hundredths place. The 4 is in my hundredths place. So to figure out what that rounds to, we need to look at the place, the thousandths place that's right after the hundredths place. If the thousandths place is 5 or bigger, then we're going to round the hundredths place up 1. So this would be $3.25. That is the cost per one cookie. Okay, so let's look at the next one. On the next one, you were given some tables, and for each of the tables, you were given what you need to find the unit rate for. So on this first one, if it says days per push-up, okay, if we're finding days per push-up, we have to look at our table very carefully. This is days, and this is push-ups. So if we're doing days per push-up, we should have days on top of our fraction divided by push-ups on the bottom of our fraction. Okay, so days per push-up. Remember that key word helps you to know what you're dividing by. So you can go ahead and just pick this top set of information, days per push-up. And if you pick the next one, days per push-up, or you pick the next one, days per push-up, or you pick the last one, days per push-up. It doesn't actually matter which one you pick because all of these are going to give you the same answer, which is 1/15 as a fraction. And then if you take 1/15 and turn it into a decimal, which some of you did, it's going to give you a repeating decimal of 0.06 repeating. So either of these answers would have been correct. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, the next one was a chart, and you were supposed to find the unit rate of minutes per gallon. So when you look at this table, this is minutes, this is gallons. So if you are doing minutes per gallon, you should have had minutes on the top of your fraction divided by gallon on the bottom. So when you're setting up your rate and your unit rate, you have to make sure you read really carefully. There's always two different ways to set up a unit rate, and these words tell you what you're finding the unit rate for. So minutes per gallon, that means we are going to take 2 minutes, that goes on the top, divided by 12.4 gallons. And the decimal that you got here was 0.16129 and a whole bunch of other numbers, okay? So I did tell you on this one to round to the hundredths place. So if you notice that the one right after your hundredths place is a 1, that means that this 6 is going to stay a 6. So we'll go ahead and do 0.16, and that is minutes per gallon. So this is per 1 gallon. Okay? So one more. So in the next one, you have a chart, and you are supposed to find kilometers per hour. This is kilometers, this is hours. So if you're doing kilometers per hour, when you set up your rate, it has to be kilometers on top divided by the hours on the bottom. Okay, remember that kilometers per hour, that tells you how you're going to do your division. So kilometers, 5 divided by hours, which is 1/3. And if I take 5 and I divide by 1/3, this is really going to be 5/1. And when you divide fractions, you flip the second one and then you multiply. So this ends up being 15 kilometers in 1 hour. Okay, so 15 kilometers per hour. Okay, so the next one. It took 5/8 of a pie to feed 1/4 of the class. How many pies are needed to feed the entire class? How many pies are needed to feed the entire class? Now, if we're feeding the entire class, this is one class. So what we really want to know is we want to know how many pies are going to feed one class. So we take the information about the pies. It took 5/8 of a pie to feed 1/4 of the class, and now we're going to divide these two. So if you take 5/8 and you divide by 1/4, and you can use your calculator to do this, but the way that we would do it by hand is 5/8 times by 4/1. So that's going to give us 28. And if I take that 28 and I change it into a mixed number, that is going to give me 2 1/2. Okay, so 2 1/2 pies per one class. Now, on the next question, it asks, how many cakes will you need to feed 3 classes? And remember, I told you to change that to pies. So how many pies will you need to feed 3 classes? So if it takes you 2 1/2 pies for 1 class, and you want to know how many you need to feed 3 classes, you're just going to take that 2 1/2 and you are going to times by 3, and that is going to give you 7 1/2 pies in total. Okay, next question. Now this one was a little bit tricky because it gave you a rate in minutes, but it is asking you to find the unit rate in 1 hour. So let me go ahead and read this to you. Brian can read 1/5 of his novel in 45 minutes. Okay, so we know in 45 minutes he can read 1/5 of his novel. If he can read at the same rate, what portion of his novel can he read in 1 hour? So you guys know that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. So if we take this rate, we can use it to help us find the unit rate of portion of the novel in 1 minute. And then we can times that by 60 to figure out what portion he can read in an hour. So he can read 1/5 of his novel in 45 minutes. So if we take the 1/5 and we divide that by 45, we're going to get this fraction of 1/225. Now this is for 1 minute. So if he can read this portion of his novel every 1 minute, when we times that by 60, we're going to get 4/15. That tells us how much of his novel he can read per hour. Okay, last question. Now this one involves comparison shopping. It says Sally bought 2 1/2 pounds of peaches for 75 cents and 4 1/4 pounds of apples for $1.65. Which fruit costs less per pound? Okay, so this is our key right here. We want to know which costs less per pound. So in order to compare those two prices, we need to find the cost for 1 pound of the peaches, and we need to find the cost for 1 pound for the apples, and then we can decide which one costs less. So let's do the peaches first. So for 2 1/5 pounds of peaches, it is 75 cents. So if I take 0.75 and I divide by 2 1/5, I get 0.3409. And remember that money always rounds to the hundredths. So the peaches are going to be 34 cents per pound. And then for the apples, we're going to take the cost, $1.65, and we are going to divide by the pounds. So $1.65 divided by 4 1/4 gives us 0.3882. We're going to round to the hundredths, so that is 0.39 cents per pound, which means that in answer to this question right here, it would be the peaches. The peaches cost less. Okay, now what I need you to do is, in order to do a retake of this test, you're going to go to ALEX, and in your ALEX, it says unit rate, fraction conversions, probability, test retake. These are all of your test retake extra practices. The one that I need you to do to retake this test is the fractional unit rate test retake extra practice. You can come in before school, you can come in after school, you can be requested for den time. I'm happy to help you during any of those times.